All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Serious Angler Podcast, where, as always, our mission here is to teach you guys more about bass fishing. And of course, that does not come without a rabbit hole or 10 here or there. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Eichbrett, and unfortunately, we do not have Idaho's finest, Mr. Adam Deacon, or the Bassin captain, Mr. Andy Full, with us today. Andy, right now, is actually living up Disneyland with the kids. Excuse me, Disney World, I should say. Deacon is out working, paying the bills. And so it is just us here today. You guys are stuck with me, but we have a great episode coming up with Mr. Fletcher Shryock, talking a bunch of really nuanced flipping, some flipping secrets, tips, things like that, that can help you get extra bites. You know, we've had flipping shows, but we have not gone, I think, this down the rabbit hole, which Fletcher's great at kind of dispelling all of that, explaining it, really kind of going the extra leg of explaining certain things from tube, flipping a tube to a creature bait to craw to a jig, and kind of when you would pick up each, the scenarios that involve them, times of year, water temperatures, the whole 9 yards. We get into it today. But we got a few notes to go with you through with you guys as we go forward, and a couple announcements, things like that. And that is next week's show. You guys have to look forward to after this one, as we have a Seriously Western that we're trying to get with John Pearl, who won the Clear Lake the One Bass Open over on Clear Lake with a just monster 3-day, 102 pounds for 3 days, 102 pounds. He won that event. So we're trying to get him on for the Seriously Western segment of Serious Angler on Monday. And then next Wednesday's show, you guys have a treat. We are bringing on Mr. Easton Fothergill, Bassmaster Classic champ, for a champions roast. So Easton has agreed to join us on the show. He does not know the guests that we are also bringing on to do the roasting. So he has lifelong friends that are on the industry right now that are going to be joining us to do the roasting, and also just, of course, talk a little bit fishing and a little bit of celebration of the Bassmaster Classic champion, who is hot off a top 10 from the Pascatank River. So you guys have that to look forward to. If you missed last week's episode with the U-Call boys, a lot of juice on chasing big bass, a fish of a lifetime, and how to trick those fish into biting. Make sure you guys check out that episode. But this leads us to my little solo segment here. Unfortunately, Deacon usually runs this. Unfortunately, can't make it, obviously. But this is the business from the bass boat. Little buzz around the industry. And as always, that is brought to you by our friends at Rec Lending. If you guys currently own or are looking to own a bass boat or an RV, and you want to make sure you're investing in your toys for the best price, but also the best means to be secure, they are the best people to give a call. So make sure you guys give them a ring. Tell them the Serious Angler crew sent you. They'll help. They'll be happy to discuss any of your investments and things like that in your bass boat, RV, things of that nature, and make sure you guys are set up correctly and to the best of your ability. So give them the Rec Lending folks a call. And so our buzz around the industry, pretty short for today, but one app that dropped for many of you hunters, you guys know, but Onyx Fish has just hit the market. So basically, for those, if you've used Onyx Hunt, it sounds like all of that technology is going into Onyx Fish, plus some more different features. Make sure you guys check that out. It sounds pretty interesting. I'll be checking it out myself as well. It seems like the week for the apps, because there's a new app from our pal, Mr. Ty Berger at Bass Fishing HQ, called Gills TV. Essentially is along the lines of an app just to help you learn more about bass fishing, where he goes with some of those pro anglers, people like himself who are very good at teaching bass fishing, breaking down water, things like that. If you want another added edge to learn more about bass fishing and get better at bass fishing, go check out Gills TV. Ty is leading that front, and it sounds like something pretty cool. So make sure you guys go support him if you're looking to become a better bass fisherman, which is why we like to have these shows for you guys. As we say, we try to be entertainingly educational. Ty is that, so support him as well. And that is all this week's business from the bass boat. And so before we get into the episode with Fletcher, one of the things I want to mention to you guys, if you missed it last week, Sniper Marine just launched their new PDL mount, pop, drop, lock it. Yes, we did just say that. And that is for your forward face and sonar pole, like a Sniper Marine pole, which nobody makes one better on the market. Pretty dang intuitive mount if you're looking to have one on your bass boat, on your kayak. Regardless of the boat you use, it's a mount that can be applied on any track mounts, things like that. Make sure you guys check that out. Snipermarine.com, excuse me. Link is down below. And last but not least, Omnia Fishing, always running sales, always running opportunities to get fishing tackle at an affordable price, but also for Omnia Pro members. And that is right now double credits on everything until April 22nd. So that means if you go spend $100 on tackle, you're going to get the 10. Usually you get $10 rewards, because 10% of that. And now it's double. So you're getting $20 back on a $100 order. So obviously, as you go up, $200, you get 40, so on and so forth. So make sure you guys are going to check that out, and as well as check out the links down below to the baits that are mentioned in today's show. So without further ado, let's get on Mr. Fletcher Shryock. All right, folks, and we're back with a regular of the show. I think we'll say at this point, it's probably been 4 or 5 times you've been on the pod, but Mr. Fletcher Shryock, dude, how have you been, man?
What's up, dude? I've been good. What about you?
Everything is great in the north right now. Fish are biting, the lakes are open, the parking lots are getting full with boats and stuff like that. So it's back to the norm in the north with, just springtime and dumb fish. So it's all's well up here anyway.
So yeah, same down here. I mean, obviously I'm in Tennessee now, right up the road from Gunnersville. I moved to Chattanooga recently. Yeah, fish are biting, people's running around, boats are all up and down the highway. It's happening for sure. So it's a good time of year.
It is. April's a great month, I feel like, in the bass fishing world. But
yeah, I think no matter where you are, pretty much, no question about that. Yeah, I've been like traveling so much. It seems like from February all the way up until now, and now I've kind of hit this like weird break where the next tournament is here at Chickamauga. So I live here in Chattanooga, like I said.
Yeah,
I've been actually able to like stop. I don't want to say chill, but I've been able to fish a lot more the last 2 weeks, and that's something I don't get to do a whole lot of. People think we fish all the time. But dude, it's like a lot of times and I'm not complaining, but a lot of times it's just like travel here, travel there, get back, wash your stuff, like redo tackle for this river, and then turn around and redo tackle to go up north. And like, you never just get a chance to like just chill and go fishing at home, or, for at least more than a couple of days at a time. So I've really enjoyed I've been up fishing at Watts Bar, just spent a lot of time up there, just actually fishing and enjoying it for a little bit. So it's been cool. And they're
do you think any of the pro guys have like this is so relevant right now, and either way with the Masters that just happened, but like, do you think they got caddies that they're like, hey, I need this rigged up for practice? Go rig up a bunch of, like their kids or something like that. Like, go rig this crap for me.
Dude, I've thought about that before, but I don't want anyone rigging my stuff. I don't want to have anyone held responsible. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I was thinking, because I'm trying to remember who I was talking about this before, but like joking about a fishing caddy. It's like, yeah, that's the one thing. I just don't trust people with knots. And I feel like, though, for practice, like, whatever, like Derb, no, obviously, but
you probably could, but I think there's a benefit to knowing what you've got on, you've got tied on, exactly what line. I don't know about you, but some of the rods I have in my rod locker, I may have had in there banging around for 2,000 miles, and I'll pull it out and I'll immediately get a bite on it. And, you just don't set the hook as hard on that one because it's kind of frayed maybe. Or,
you just don't know.
It's good to be in connection with what you got going on in the rod locker, I feel like, But it would be nice if we had someone that could manage that crap. It'd be better.
Yeah. Sure. I bet you with all those guys out there, the father-son team duos, that it's, the guy's just like, yeah, I want to throw a shaky head in the jig tomorrow. Rig those up for me, would you?
Like, yeah, that would happen. I can see that happening for sure. Actually, back in the day when I used to fish a lot of team stuff, we would do some stuff like that. Yeah. Me and Hunter's done that a couple times. I probably couldn't tie a good enough knot for Hunter nowadays, but back in the day I could.
Is he just too OCD now, is what you're saying?
We're both OCD in our own ways. There's no doubt. I think he gets a lot of it from me, but it's been cool to watch him. It's cool to see him have a good classic. That was
yeah, dude. I loved watching Easton win. Would have loved a classic where Lee won, but like I was pulling for Hunter, man, just because like he was so close at Murray, and I was dying for him to win that one, and it was just like his first like big trophy. I feel like a classic would be freaking nuts.
And, yeah, he's been close. Like I think that's the 5th time. Like he's been, which he ended up 4th, which you can say is close. But I mean, like you watched the event. What's that?
Top 5's close. Like
yeah, well, he's been 2nd or 3rd now 4 times, I think. And had some things happen and whatever. So I was like, this might be the one. But it was cool to see Easton win though too, for sure. He seems like a really good kid. I've not heard one thing. Like everything I've heard about that kid's been super positive. So it's cool to see him win. But it was definitely fun watching Hunter at least have a chance on that final day. I didn't go to the expo the 3rd day. I told my sponsors, I was like, look, when my brother wins the Bassmaster Classic, I want to like have seen it myself rather than someone else tell me about it. So I was like, I come into the expo after they shut down live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just for a couple
Like,
hours, but
yeah, you want to be able to like watch it in the moment versus watch highlights after you knew the
yeah,
verdict of
dude.
if you won or not. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, it was cool. It was cool that final day to watch all that happen. So it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I was definitely pulling from. He's fun to watch live. I love to see. You can tell that he's very emotional and he wears it on his sleeves. And I think that's one thing that's cool about Hunter is like he's always been that way, especially like the Murray event, dude. It's just when he was screaming like early in the morning, the person's outside. It's like, sorry, Demeanor.
Yeah, yeah. What's crazy
I
is
love
I used to
watching
be
that.
worse than him. And then
Screaming and
like,
hollering.
yeah, and then somewhere along the way, like I think I took it too far, you know? This is maybe right the start of MLF kind of thing, and like I just kind of stopped altogether. So I'm a lot more chill, I think, than what he gets. But he just lets it go, which is cool. It was cool to see.
Yeah.
I know though I saw some negativity on which you're going to see any negativity on social about anything on social media. But I did really like the Deion Sanders deal that they had on Bass Live the final day. I don't know if you saw, but that was pretty.
Yeah.
That was pretty damn cool. Like I'm a big Deion Sanders fan. That whole thing, and so to see him on there, he was on there commentating a couple of my brother's fish catches in the Bassmaster Classic the third day. I
Yeah.
thought that was pretty cool. It was
Yeah.
fun.
It's pretty sick. And dude, anyone that has anything bad to say about the Deion Sanders thing are the same people that complain that there's not enough money in bass fishing. Well, it's like, what here's the effort to try to get somebody that can bring additional eyes outside of bass fishing to bass fishing. So yeah, people are always gonna complain. I mean, like the hooting and hollering thing, like people have complained about Ike for years, but he's still one of the the biggest names and most recognizable faces in fishing. So it is what it is. Screw them people, man.
No, I know
Uh,
they're always there, and they're always the loudest too. So it is
yeah,
what it is. We don't
yeah,
have to go
yeah.
into that, but too long, but too far. But
Always loudest from the couch, and then we'll leave it at
I just
that.
think there's a lot of people that just literally sit there and look for a reason to take their frustrations out on the internet because they know no one's going to call them out on it. So
But yeah, there's
try not to
that. They
be that
know they're
guy. That's all.
yeah, they know they'll never have to see anybody face to face, and then or it's either that or they're looking for something to make a video on that'll get them views on YouTube, whatever the means may be. And regardless, here we are, and it's
Yep.
fun watching Hunter. One of these days, I think it's. I've told you this. I think it's a matter of when, not if. Like his time is coming. Like he's one of those guys where it's all going to be about the story. Then when it becomes his time, because he's the guy that's done it the right way, is one of the good guys, and when he wins, that's going to be the story. Is when he finally gets that win.
I'd love.
Um,
I agree with that, and I'd love to hear you say the good guys because I think that's kind of funny whenever you say that.
Funny as like you disagree, your brother's not
Then,
a
well,
good
I
guy.
just sometimes and I agree with you, but then sometimes I wonder, well, who are the bad guys? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, well, they're out there, and
they're
we'll let
out there.
other publications flesh those out. We're not here to do
Yeah,
that.
we're just here to talk others. That's it. That's
It's right, we're here to talk bass fishing. The one thing cool though, I want to hit on at least for the people that are listening, something I want to just to share with folks for next week's show. We were talking about Easton's win, is we were actually getting him on for next week's show, and it's going to be a champions roast. So he doesn't know who's coming on, but we're inviting some of his buddies and some lifelong friends, things like that, to come on and just make fun of him. So it's going to be pretty funny
I'll have to watch that.
next
That'd be
week.
cool.
But I don't know why he agreed to do it. On a whim, I just texted him and said, "Hey, I got this idea. That'd be pretty funny. Like, at the Tom Brady roast, I'm like, we should just have a champions roast for you, and hopefully we'll make it a tradition for the Classic and Red Crest guys going forward.
Yeah, that's
That
a
would
good.
be
That's a cool idea. I'll have to tune in for that one. He seems like a really good kid for sure, and he can catch them. It was really ironic seeing him obviously struggle in the first two elite events and then just come rallying. But
yeah,
Florida's
back in the
a
top
place that
10.
can do that to anybody. So just shows you how vulnerable this whole game is. I tell you what, I had my last. So I've had 3 events this year. First one was whatever. It wasn't real good, and then the second one I'd have felt like I had a chance to win. Wind blew real bad. Last day I finished fifth, and the last one at Murray though, like I would have bet if I could have bet on myself, I'd have bet the house, dude, that I was going to at least get a top 20, probably a top 10. Finish next to last. So like that just goes to kind of show you how crazy and vulnerable this sport is. You know what I mean? Just talking about Easton having a bad start and then turn around, he obviously wins the Classic, and I think he finished fourth or fifth this past week at the
Yeah,
Pastel Tank or whatever over there. So
he's back on
he's
that
going to get
momentum.
rolling. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, yeah, dude. And so I'm curious. So we're gonna get into a bunch of flipping stuff and things like that and pick your brain, but I'm more curious. at least right now, like why'd you think that for Murray? What was the confidence going into it? What led you to like think that you would bet the house?
So I just had a lot of bites. In MLF format, you got to generate a lot. I think any format, you got to generate a lot of bites, and especially on a place like Murray, you would think you generate a lot of bites, you're going to catch X number of 2+ pounders. You know what I mean? And like
Yeah,
the first two bites I get's a 3.5 and a 3 or 2 and 3, whatever, two good chunks. I'm like, I immediately cut my hook off because I know how that goes. Right? There's no sense in being on a lake of that quality to sit there and just keep catching them.
right.
And I got, I don't know, 40 bites the first day, like just something dumb. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to have a good tournament. And the second day wasn't quite as good, but I kind of figured once I kind of got on the right kind of stuff. And dude, the amount of 112 to 115s I caught was insane.
Sheesh.
Just non-scoreable, non-keepers. It
Yeah,
wouldn't matter what format it is. It's you know what I mean. But like, I didn't see that coming. And what's crazy is I turned around and watched everyone that did really well was doing the exact same thing I was doing. They just weren't in the little region, the creek that I was in. You know what I mean? Like I was doing
yeah.
the right thing on the right stuff in the wrong place and next to
Gosh.
last. I could have went one creek over, dude, and probably made a top 10. You know what I mean? I'm not saying like I'm not making excuses. It's just funny how
Right.
sometimes it works out that way. For whatever
Yeah.
reason, that area, what I was doing, the quality, they just weren't up there the same. Generated plenty of bites, just not, it's weird. It can be weird like that. You look at the
Yes.
leaderboard and you're like, what is he doing? And the fact of the matter is, I'm reeling him in left and right. And what are you going to do at that point? You know what I mean?
Right.
Try to
So
keep
close
catching
yet
them,
so far.
Hindsight, I
Yeah.
should have ran out of that area and went somewhere blind, brand new, but you don't know that at the time.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, beyond just like you said, you were on them in practice though. So you think they just slid up and you just
No,
weren't
no,
able to
I caught
follow
a
them, or
lot of them in the tournament. I mean, I had that many bites, but a lot of them were not keepers.
just it's not keepers. Okay.
It's just weird. Like even now, sitting here thinking about it, if you go to Lake Murray and you tell me, "Hey, I'm getting 40 bites," I don't care what you're doing, Bailey. You're going to catch some good ones. You're going to have 15 or 20 2+ pounders, and your best
Yeah.
five is probably going to weigh 18. If I had to guess, right? Like, or maybe they weigh 15 or 16, but you're going to have a decent number, dude. I think I caught 2 or 3 scoreables the first day and 2 or 3 the second day. Like it was horrendous.
Gosh. Yeah.
So
And
anyway,
I feel like Murray's one of the better lakes right now on the East Coast for average size. Like I feel like it's
that's what I'm getting. But that's what I'm saying about the sport, man. You just never know sometimes. Like you can be
yeah.
doing, yeah, you just don't know. That's my whole point with it. So,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and especially when you're talking about Florida. Florida feels like it's a it's a gauntlet. Like when you guys go there, it's typically, 2 events or so in Florida to start the year. And it's like whoever does well in the first one feels like you can kind of like you're saying, almost bet the house they're gonna have a great good tournament in the second one. And it's just like, but if you have one bad one, you might as well just say they're gonna have a bad Florida strain because it's just Florida chews up and spits people out. Like it's never the same. But it
yeah,
seems though like guys like yourself seem to mesh well with places like that.
dude, honestly, I've probably spent more time fishing in Florida than I have anywhere else in the country. So like I feel, and
Wow.
that's not everywhere down there. I feel like I can do really well, but I mean, I've just spent a lot of time chasing those Florida bass around. It's not that I haven't mastered or like I'm some Florida guru, but somehow every time we go down there, I manage to have a good tournament, or I have had good tournaments for the last 5 or 6 years down there, maybe longer, just because I've spent so much time there. You know what I mean? And it's just a
Yeah.
place that can really kind of like what I was saying about Murray. A lot of guys can get sucked into a lot of traps down there that you have to kind of experience or see before to kind of I don't know.
Yeah.
It's definitely a weird place. I wish all of our tournaments was in Florida. I wouldn't complain too much. I wouldn't be mad about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that would
I
that
have
would
a
fit
Florida
you the
series.
most. Yeah. Well, and it was cool to like that was a really fun event to watch. Just because you had a mix of different things going on and ways guys catch them, but like also watching you guys break down from a day to day with, especially with how much Florida changes by the hour. But um, like when Bobby Lane won, when he was talking about how he knew on that certain wind direction that that lake or that part of the lake that he won in would have enough water level because of the wind, like that stuff kind of like well, up here in the glacial lakes, like we don't think about that stuff. So it's kind of it was crazy how that all played into it, and I think that comes with time. So like you saying you spent that much time in Florida probably makes sense why you're able to adjust a little bit easier with those Florida fish. It's just simply because of understanding how the lakes operate and the fish operate.
Yeah, I will say though, even up north though too, like even up on Erie, I've always paid a lot of attention to, especially the flatter lakes, shallower lakes. Typically fishing for largemouth, right? Not necessarily a smallmouth thing, but like when the wind's blowing certain ways, especially like on Lake Erie, fishing the harbors and stuff for largemouth and things like that. Just for an example, like if I know it's blowing hard out of the south or whatever it is, like you'll fish them certain, they'll set up on them current breaks. And a lot of times it'll push current out for a while. And if the wind lays down, the current will start pulling in and it'll set
Mhm.
up the ambush points different. If you know what I'm talking about, like,
Oh yeah.
and you're just kind of constantly being aware of that. And then obviously in Florida, I think, and I could be wrong, I didn't go back and watch the show, but like, I think what Bobby was talking about was it flushing, pulling some of that clean water out of an area because he knew that the wind was going to pull that clean. And obviously in Florida, up north, the fish don't care necessarily if the water's dirty. But in Florida, you know, you want that clean water. When he knew it was going to switch and pull that, that's a Florida thing, right? Like knowing
Mhm.
that clean water is right there. It's dynamite if it gets to right here when that wind pushes it. You know what I mean? So it's a
Yeah.
combination of like understanding that same wind current thing that you'd have anywhere in the country and taking it to Florida, and it becomes more of a wind current plus water clarity situation. You know,
Yeah.
that's the fun thing about fishing, man. There's so many different factors. One day, one tournament up north, it doesn't matter at all the water clarity. The next place, it absolutely is everything. You know, that's what's so fun about chasing these things around.
Well, and I think that's the next level of why you guys are so good is because I think the average angler that can go out and catch fish, on the daily sees a lot of what you see above the water and things like that, where you guys look at it beyond like below the surface. Like when you look at a Lake Erie, a lot of guys can go out and graph, find rock piles, find transitions, things like that, and they're going to run into fish. But there's that next level you just talked about where on a south wind, there's going to be current wrapping around that one shoal a certain way. And then when it stops, it's going to come back a certain way. Where the average guy isn't going to understand that. He's like, oh, I don't get it. I was just getting bites off of this. He might understand he might get bit there on a south wind, but he might not understand why. Where I think that's a cool factor where it's like our Finger Lakes, man, well, they run, them, they're fingers that run straight north south. There's nothing else to them.
Yep.
The best days out there are after a hard north or south wind because you have current wrapping around the points, things like that. Where it's super cool how you guys kind of put that together. And like I wouldn't know if it weren't for guys like you that are coming on a show like this to spill those kind of beans. But that's a cool deal. And I guess so when you look at it on a bigger scale, like you're talking about Great Lakes in that scenario, but a place where it comes down to a flip and bite. How much are you looking at like wind direction and stuff when you're going out and looking for a reed stretch to flip or something like that?
You know, in fact, wind always factors in. It can totally trash your day. It can totally make your day. It depends on what
Mhm.
type of place we're talking about. For instance, if I'm on like a Lake Erie and I'm way back, say I'm way back in the lily pads or way back in some of them flat areas, and there's typically fish that live back in a lot of them places, like in the marshy areas. If
Mhm.
I know it's going to blow, if I'm on the say the U.S. side and I know it's blowing hard out of the south and pushing all the water to Canada, I'm going to have to probably come up with a different plan. I'm not going to be able to go back and flip those pads or flip that grass or whatever I was doing, flip the reeds or whatever, because it's going to draw. Shoot, sometimes it could draw 2 foot, 18 inches of water out of a place like that, to where you're going to have to reconfigure your game plan. But there's also times where the opposite can happen, where if it's blowing north really hard and you're obviously not getting crushed by the waves and the wind because of the break walls and things like that. On a north wind, like, yeah, that bite was okay the other day whenever the wind wasn't blowing. But now that it's pushed a lot of water in, now you maybe have a foot and 18 inches higher of water against the reeds in the back, to where it took a normal, okay, yeah, there was some fish back there to where it can really make things better too. So you're always kind of, I mean, like I said, it just depends on the scenarios, on what you're looking for and things like that. It can make it better. It can absolutely crush you. It can make it worse. And that all depends on the situations. And I will say, and I don't want to get into the whole forward facing sonar thing
Yeah.
in this conversation, but I will say I love forward facing sonar. I don't use it all the time and using it a lot lately. But I feel like in some situations, it kind of takes the guesswork out of some of the things we're talking about. Because if you show up on a place and they're on the south side of the shoal and you can see them crawling over the rocks and whatever, the wind switches, and you just pull up there and you just look, and if they're not
Yeah.
there, you just keep, you know what I mean? Like it kind of takes a little bit of that away, but I still think that having that general understanding of what the conditions do, and basically what I'm saying is experience can take you a long ways in fishing. It has taken guys a long way. I feel like the sonar takes away from that, but obviously it has all of its own challenges in itself. It's just different. You know what I mean? The technology
Yeah.
can definitely tell you a lot quicker and easier now, maybe not even having a good understanding, or like, you don't have to be a 50-year-old veteran to understand what you can just see them, you know what I mean, but or at least know where to
Right.
keep looking. And so technology is changing that some, but I still think there's a lot of information out there that experience still obviously reigns supreme. But it's getting less, I feel like, with technology as we go. Not that I'm
Yeah,
complaining about. I'm just making a statement that it is changing
right.
some.
Yeah, no, and it's a great point where it's essentially allowing you to go from step 1 to step 3 with being able to kind of skip through there without having to do step 2, or making step 2 much easier or a lot faster, if that makes sense. Where it's the guys that understand what step 2 is and understand why those fish are changing from the north to the south side of the shoal, that in the long run are going to be much further off. Where if you're just relying on the tech, you're going to run 50 different spots and you're going to put down and see if they're there or not. But like the guys that understand it, they're going to run 10 different areas because they understand why it's happening and land on them at least faster.
Yeah, and I
Um,
feel like honestly, give me the guy that's skipping step two from a competitive standpoint now, because now that you're able to be like, okay, well, they're not here, they're not here. It allows you that much further down the line. They can be at step 4 and step 5 that we didn't even know existed 5 or 10 years ago.
we're seeing that happen right
And they
now.
may not even understand it entirely, but they're seeing it, and then eventually they put it together. And now the next thing you know, they are way smarter than what you are or what you were, right? So it's
It's
cool. It's cool seeing it all change and change fast, and seeing a lot
there's
of
a
theories that get debunked and things like that. But
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one interesting thing about it. Not to go down that rabbit hole, but the amount of myths that we've always preached in fishing. I shouldn't say we, but I've heard preached in fishing growing up that it's like has been debunked now or confirmed from tech, which is I think is really cool, at least as like a student of the game, which is awesome to learn. But yeah, it's just crazy in that regard. Like, I mean, one of the recent shows we did last week, these young studs from Texas, man, these guys out there, and they're finding these spawners out super deep, and and recognizing that they're spawning and how big these fish are, and can tell you on the dot if it's 8 pounder or if it's a 9 pounder. Like it's crazy that they could tell you these things, and it's awesome, like to learn about that stuff. But it's like, where are we going? But either
the
way,
moon, we're
back
going to the moon.
we're going to the moon.
No, I
Uh,
love it though. I think it's cool, but it's just definitely a different, it's just different. But like I said, back to what we were getting at, like there's all this information like you've known over the years and all these things. And if you use that, obviously, along with the technology, like it can just take it even further. And that's why
yeah.
you're seeing guys, these bags just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger because our understanding of what's going on, even if you're using the sonar, you're not, just our general understanding and knowledge just got ramped up so much in the last handful of years that guys are just better, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's we seen it last weekend with the Pasquotang with Kyle Welcher. Good Lord, almost literally doubled the weight of second place. Like it's in an area, nevertheless, that the whole field tried. Like he just did something. He just figured something out entirely different. And we're gonna keep. We've seen that time and time again, from the BPT guys to the Bassmaster guys. Like when you have the best out there with the best, means of finding and catching fish. Like you're gonna see new things get unlocked consistently.
Yeah, and it
Um,
makes me wonder. It makes me wonder how many of the guys knew. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty bummed whenever I saw that deal going down at the Pasco. When I literally turned on live and I saw it, and I knew, which I had known previously. I'd done a lot of scoping up shallow since Lowrance come out with Active Target One, just because that's where I live or try to live, is up in the dirt,
yeah,
and I've used it a lot. Like not necessarily like just full blown hunting them like that. Obviously I know that now and I've known that more recently, but like I just don't know how much. Well, I guess what I'm getting at is I don't know how much of that field really knew that capability was there going into that event. And maybe they did, but I
mm,
feel like a lot of the field probably didn't try to make that work. I would love to know how many of them tried to make it work and simply wasn't able to come up with what he come up with, or how many of the guys are like, oh shoot, I can go do that now, and everyone's going to be doing that. I don't know what the answer is to that. What do you think about that? Do you think most of the guys knew and tried it, or most of the guys, it was under the radar for them and it will not be moving forward? I don't know. What do you think?
I think they at least knew that it was a capability.
Yeah.
Um, and definitely I think like your guys' event at Murray with guys that were doing that. And obviously not to the extreme case of a foot and a half of water catching a 10 pounder like Kyle Welcher was.
Right.
But I think more it was just I don't know. I think they just skimmed over the area where I think how he hunkered down and picked apart every single like piece of cover, everything in that area. Like like Kyle did, I think guys looked at that as like moving too slow potentially. And I don't want to obviously speak as if I understand or I'm at any level of mental capacity as these elite guys, but that's at least potentially where I think where the gap was. I think other guys were covering water faster,
Yeah.
where they might have been missing overfish, where Kyle was just in an area where there's a lot of big fish and just went so slow that he picked apart absolutely everything. Was
Right, and
able to
just an
wind up
area
on
where they
there.
were just ganged up, obviously. And maybe it was just an area thing. I don't know. I just was kind of wondering how many guys try to do that
Yeah.
because obviously moving forward now, no one's going to sleep on that. That was why it was
No.
kind of a bummer for me when I saw what was going on. I was like, well, there goes that, And then he wins
Yeah.
by 45 pounds. No one's going to sleep on that again. So
No, but
maybe
you're
no
I
one
think
did. Maybe he literally found that regardless, he won by 45 pounds. And so he
yeah.
did an incredible feat there. But I just would be curious as to how the field played it that week. If there was that many areas in that system that had it and it was overlooked by a lot of guys, or if that was just the juice place that it was all going down at and he obviously capitalized on. Because clearly you can't go flying around on 10 on your trolling motor and expect to find that kind of stuff doing that. You know what I mean?
No, like he was creeping,
Yeah,
like
for
that.
sure.
That's the only. That's where I think some guys were buzzing and they could see like guys like Brandon Lester were finding him on bed. He was doing the same thing, but I think he was moving a lot faster where he was catching the obvious ones, or like when he could pull up to a dock, he'd do a quick scan. If it was obvious there was a fish on there, he'd be able to slow down. Where some of the Kyle Welcher's fish was like, in a big tree root or stump, things like that, where if you're buzzing, you're probably going to miss it because you're panning over the stump. There's not an obvious, fish next to it. Keep going.
Yep.
Where
And then you can also do the same deal, man, and just go really slow and never run into them. Like,
right,
if you're
true,
out there going at that rate because they might be hiding behind, they're moving around, obviously, without getting too far into it. But yeah, I mean, you can go really slow and obviously not cover enough water and never find him and end up in a real bad spot too. So it was really cool to
yeah,
see what he did. That was pretty awesome.
yeah. I'm looking forward to the shows and stuff that he goes on. If he does choose to talk about it and kind of because I guess practice sucked, like he figured that out on day one. So it'd be cool to see into his mind on why he hunkered down, that sort of thing. But it was a cool way to catch him and was pretty nuts to watch. But uh, talking about like when you take that aside, the guys were going to catch those fish flipping, and that is one thing that you've definitely excelled at. And I think before we get into some of these flipping questions that I have for you, dude, we got to talk about, especially people on YouTube. They see exactly what I'm seeing. They see that Fafo shirt that you're wearing right now, dude. You got to tell one to people about the bait, and also just how freaking sick that shirt is, man.
We got some merch coming out. You guys can see we got a couple of different shirts and hats coming out. I've been sitting here fidgeting with the bait. Hit the light for you guys here. We've been sitting here
Oh
fidgeting
yeah,
with the bait, and it's nothing like we reinvented the wheel, but basically I just took what I liked about all the creature baits and just put them all into one that I just feel like is the best overall flipping, pitching, punching bait, jig trailer. It's got a real subtle action to it. I've never been one to like a flipping bait that for instance, like a Yama crawl, which is a rage crawl style bait, or a chigger. Like I don't want a whole lot of action on my bait. I want a little bit, but I also want it to do more gliding than I want action. I don't want the bait. Anytime you have a bait that's got appendages that flap really hard, the bait goes in a straight line because the
yeah,
appendages are pulling it back and it allows them, in which a lot of fish obviously bite those lures. I'm not knocking those lures, but for me, a lot of my confidence comes in a bait that does a little bit of darting action. Kind of like if you take a tube, which is obviously what my brother, had a good classic with. And he may or may not have got that concept from me years ago. But a tube is very much has a darting action. It's not, and I feel like in the fish's world, it's even pressured fish, whatever, they're seeing lures come at them, a jig, so many things are just going in a straight line, right? Well, there's a lot of things swimming around in the water that's swimming in a straight line. Well, when something's a little bit irregular, that's why years ago Van Dam talked about deflection and having a bait hunt and kick off a rock or whatever off a stump, and that's what trigger bites. I feel like the same thing happens obviously with flipping, or just any type of lure. If you got any type of semi-stained to clear water, I want that lure to be maybe hop up and take off to the left and glide a little bit, and I feel like that triggers a strike. Or maybe it hops off,
Hmm.
whatever. It triggers something different out of that fish than just the bait that's just going. I feel like a lot of times they'll just watch that bait go in a straight line. If it happens to do something different or hop to the left or right, that might trigger that fish to bite. So I just wanted something that did that. I wanted it to be the right size for a 4 or 5 flipping hook, because some of the bodies on the baits are just too long, in my opinion. And if you flip a lot, you'll know what I'm talking about, or the guys that do flip a lot will know what I'm talking about, is you'll run into a deal where your straight shank or EWG, either way, whatever hook you're using, will ball up into the bait. The hook point rolls up into the bait instead of the hook point coming out. And a lot of that's just the size of the body itself. So I went with a little bit shorter of a body so that the hook actually goes out instead of in. And the hook is actually in the back of the bait. So if you go ahead and put the hook point, say you make this body longer and the hook point goes in, say 75% back into the body. Well, now that hook point's got a lot of plastic in front of it where it can either go out into the fish's mouth or it can go in back into the plastic to where you'll never hook that fish. Like I've done it several times where you can catch a fish off a laydown or out of a bush or whatever, and you'll go to swing it in the boat and it'll fall off in the air, and you'll go to look and you've never had that fish hooked. It was literally just hanging on to the bait and to the weight until it, until you went to swing it in or whatever. So I just try to eliminate some of that, keep it to where the hook point could be buried in the ribs. I've got the ribs flipped around a little bit different than what you traditionally see. So the hook point's out, but it's just barely stuck in the ribs. So this is a bait you will hang. You're not going to fish super clean with this thing. Like you are going to snag it some, and that's the whole point. Or at least I want to, because when I do get that bite, I don't want that hook point rolling up in the bait. I want it being right there on the edge, ready to catch one at all times. So that's basically the design. It's nothing new and crazy, but I feel like with flipping, especially with what we're talking about with technology getting better and guys are just catching them better and better, dude, you don't get that many bites some days. And if you want to compete flipping, you're going to have to catch most of them. You want to catch as many of them as you possibly can just to keep up. And I feel like just having these little things either way, having these little things that help you along the way can turn out to, really benefit you in the end. So.
Yeah, and so for when this gets on Omnia Fishing, we can steer our folks that way to go get some. What are your top, let's say, 3 colors
So
of
I'm
that
holding
bait
this
you're
one
gonna be
here. This
throwing?
is one I use in Florida. It was a hematoma one.
Mhm.
This one, Big Bite Baits, has a 1099 as well. So this is the Big Bite Baits FAFO for the guys that don't know. The 1099 is a great color. Like it's like a
I
green
love
pumpkin
that
on one side,
1099.
black and blue fleck on the other. And yeah, I mean, those are honestly that and green pumpkin. A green pumpkin flash. I know in the Tennessee River, I'll drop a little nugget. The green pumpkin flash here, especially in the springtime, is just really good for whatever reason. I don't know what it is about that gold or that silver fleck, but that's a really good one this time of year. Anytime, I'd say up until post spawn, that green pumpkin flash is really good too. So those are my 3 right
Oh,
now for sure.
I like it. I also absolutely love the name 1099.
Yeah, that
That's
was
pretty
that's
sus.
that was a color that they had for years that I really fell in love with. So we just transferred that obviously into the FAFO too. So it's been cool to be a part of this deal. Like I said, I wish I could have invented some crazy new flipping bait that was just totally different than what's out there. But man, what's out there works. It's just, and also this one's very buoyant. It doesn't have any salt in it. So when it goes
Oh,
down to the bottom, I feel like a lot of lures, if they have a lot of salt, and it hits the bottom, a lot of times they just fall over. And a lot of times this time of year, you're fishing for spawning fish when you're flipping. I want that bait. If I'm just sitting there and I'm slow, just bed fishing or thinking that there's a fish on a bed, say around a cypress tree or a root or whatever, I want that bait to stand up and have a little quiver action while it's down there. At least a little bit of movement while it's on the bottom, I feel like can trigger a bass. Because you'll see them on our forward facing sonar at times. You'll see them go down on it and study it, and then sometimes they'll just rise up and move off, or sometimes they'll just sit there and follow it. So I feel like that buoyancy gives you a little bit extra of a chance to get that fish to bite the bait versus it just laying down in the silt and the mud and she just
yeah.
swims off. So I feel like the buoyancy helps a little bit too. Sorry, I could go on and on about this thing, but those are some of the things that, like I said, we're not
No, that's
reinventing the wheel, but I just feel like it's a better version of
yeah.
what's out
No,
there.
no, this is perfect, dude. I mean, this is exactly the way I wanted to take this show was, flipping in, a grand view is relatively straightforward. You could take a jig anywhere this time of, or really any time of year, but anywhere around the country and flip several different types of cover and you're going to get bites. But trying to break all that down into the why and bait selection, things like that. And that's kind of how I wanted to start it was, with baits in general, and talking about the FAFO, which is another incredible name that you guys had here.
Thank you.
Uh, and watching Hunter do well with the tube, watching guys like Hackney at the classic flip a jig, when it comes to bait selection to go and flip between, a tube, a beaver style bait like you just showed us with the FAFO, to jig or a creature bait, like what variables or factors are you looking at to determine, like, and especially talk about the tube, because I feel like for a lot of people flipping a tube, we've heard it, but not a lot of people do it because it just seems like a weird concept. So, like, what factors do you look at in order to throw different things?
Well, I'll start out with the jig deal. And I created a jig with Buckeye lures this past year. It's called the Thump Jig. And jig fishing typically, and this is going to go against probably what a lot of people think, but I'm just going to tell you my personal opinion doing this for a few years now. Um, I like to pitch a jig around boat docks more. I do it more as a general pitching deal. Like, I don't like to pitch a jig in like gnarly heavy cover. I don't care what jig it is. You can have a 0 degree tie with a super heavy fiber guard. I'm just less efficient at pitching a jig in heavy cover day in and day. But now, if I'm just generally fishing, say, seawalls and boat docks and things like that, rocks, where I can be efficient with a jig, I love a jig. But as far as
Yeah.
like the heavier cover stuff, I'm typically going to lean towards a creature bait or a tube 95% of the time. If I get to a point where I'm hanging a jig too much, because flipping a lot of times is just about efficiency. Like, you're
Yeah.
just dropping the bait in the fish's house. The more you can do that, and also being able to visualize and understand, okay, if we got rising water, the fish are going to set up on the insides of this stuff, maybe up around the tree trunks on the laydown versus out on the ends. Now we got falling water. I need to target the ends of these laydowns, or maybe the ends of these bushes, whatever the case is. Like, you have to kind of visually know where these fish are moving to, because that's one such, for the most part, it's one situation you can't do with forward facing sonar. But once you kind of lock into what those fish are doing, it's about efficiency. So I feel like a jig doesn't make me as efficient, generally speaking, unless the water's like, say, below 50. I'm going to lean more towards the tube or the creature bait, unless if I can fish that jig clean, I'll fish it all day, no problem. But I just don't. I want to be able to make as many drops into their house once I figure out. Maybe I don't even have a pattern figured out. Maybe I'm just junk fishing. I catch one in 6 inches of water. I catch one in 6 feet of water. As long as I can be efficient with that jig up until the water's, say, even post spawn, I love a jig. But outside of that, it's more the creature bait stuff. And as far as like, when do I choose a creature bait over a tube? That depends on a lot of different scenarios. Obviously, if I'm punching, I've never even physically punched a fish with a tube, because you're going to have a really hard time holding the hook. Um,
Yeah.
so when I'm punching, it's generally a FAFO creature beaver style bait type of deal, just because of the way it holds the hook. But as far as like, when I choose when you get down to the question, when do you choose the creature bait over the tube? There are times when I'm fishing, dude, I could not tell you why I will say this is tube water, and I can't sit here and tell you this is
You just
creature
feel
bait
it.
water. Like, it's
Yeah.
just, I will typically just have a feeling, and then a lot of times too, you just got to kind of check both of them. And I've noticed at times where they will bite one over the other. Believe it or not, I've felt that way, that they'll bite a creature bait over a tube or vice versa. It's hard to explain. I feel like right now the tube has gotten the nod more lately, and that's because, well, I've used it a lot in the last several years, and I feel like it's been kind of a sleeper. A lot of people have not used it. A lot of people go in there with the standard creature bait or a jig, and I've been able to go behind them with a tube. Now I feel like the tube's getting more and more attention, so I'm not sure how the fish are going to react to that. It's obviously always a moving target. So that's the one thing I know for sure about fishing. These fish are smarter than I ever thought they were, and they're just
Uh,
adapting to what they're being present. They're just adapting to the situation around them. So you get more pressure on them, you get more anglers on them. Those little subtle things can make a difference. But generally speaking, flipping's an efficiency thing. It's understanding how the fish relate to the cover and being able to present your bait as many times throughout the day to those fish and those places. And that's going to be the guy that catches the most bass. Now, understanding all of that and all the different conditions and places across the country obviously is very complex. But that's what makes a good flipper, in my opinion, is the guy that can visually see it, consistently do it. There's times where you got to go at a snail's pace and know when to do that. And there's times where you can totally rip down the bank and just hit high percentage stuff. And the guy who covers the most miles of water that day will get the
yeah.
most bites and catch the biggest bag too. So it all just varies. And obviously we can't get into all them scenarios, but there's obviously a lot of,
Right.
and that's why I like it. There's just a lot of different ways to go about it. So
Yeah. And so I guess with that, like, do you often have like two setups with a creature bait and one with a tube on deck at the same time?
yeah, practice, I'll have both for sure. And a lot of times I'll just have a screw lock on both of them. I have 3 different weights. I might have a 1/4 ounce. That's one thing I will say. I've gotten more lighter here recently in the
Hmm.
last couple of years. I never used to use a quarter at all. I was always like 3/8, half, 3/4 kind of thing. And
Yeah.
now I've kind of went more, but I'll have like 3 different size weights. And I may not have them both on deck. I might thread I might thread the FAFO on for an hour and then turn around. If something pulls it off, I might switch over and put the tube on. Not that it makes a huge difference, but I do try to keep them honest with both of them for sure.
Will your rod and reel setups for flipping, the tube be the same as the creature bait, like
Yeah,
hooks and
so I've
everything
been
too?
using a 7-Eleven for a lot of my flipping and pitching. I don't recommend that to everybody. And I just had a conversation with a guy recently. He made a good point. It's just a guy that I'm friends with, and he said he likes to use 7 foot for everything. He likes to skip a jig with a 7 footer. He likes to, everything he does is 7 foot. That way he's consistent every time he picks up a rod. I understand that. But the reason why I like to use the 7-Eleven, even over a 7.6 or a 7.3, and I'll use a 7.3 a fair amount too. I love a 7.3. I am super accurate with a 7.3. 7.6, I'm maybe a little bit less accurate. But man, when you go to that 7-Eleven and you're flipping and pitching a lot, there's just times, man, where like, everyone that's done it a fair amount, you pitch up to that tree and you look up because there's a jet skier coming or whatever the case, and you look back, whatever the case may be, one tries to burn you. And typically, them ones that try to burn you, what I mean by burning you is you pitch up there and she gets it, and you don't, for whatever reason, you don't catch
Yeah,
it, and she's already off to the races, or she's under the boat or whatever. That 7-Eleven has saved me over and over again because you don't think about, okay, well, it's only 5 inches more than a 7.6, whatever. But dude, the arc in which that rod takes up line, it basically eliminates you messing up. And I feel like you
yeah,
have more leverage on the fish when you go to penetrate the hook. And I'll say this too, like I feel like there's something to do with the angle with that longer rod. I don't break my line near as much with a 7-Eleven as I do say a 7.3. I don't know if it's the speed in which I'm cracking the rod a lot of times or what, or if it's just the angle, the arc in which the 7-Eleven hits over a 7.3. But I break my line a lot less with a longer rod, and I tend to catch way more. Just all about landing the fish. Like I was saying earlier,
yeah,
when I designed this bait, it wasn't just about getting the bite. It was about I want to catch more than what I'm catching now. I wanted to catch more than what I'm catching last year. And even
yeah,
tube fishing, for sure, I'll say the reason why a lot of guys, and I won't name drop names, but there's a couple of pros that I've been friends with for years that literally took their bag of tubes out of their boat. They don't own them anymore because they
mm,
lost them. They lose so many fish on them because them tubes ball up. A tube is typically a fish losing dude for most guys. Anyone that fishes a tube knows that. I've developed, and obviously shared with my brother some things that we've done a little bit different that's helped the hookup ratio with flipping and fishing a tube a lot too. And a lot of it I feel like is the rod, but there's some other things too. It's just so much to get into, Bailey. But the tube
yeah,
fishing definitely, I will say, guys, be a little bit more careful. Like, I use a Trocar TK 135 5/0, 4/0 or 5/0 most of the time. So I'm using a straight shank hook a lot of times. Now, there are some finesse tubes that I'll use a regular like tube style hook or like an
yeah,
EWG style hook. But just generally speaking, the tubes are harder to land most of your bites unless you're doing certain things. And we're actually working on a tube right now with Big Bite. We're trying to get it right that I feel like will help solve some of those problems that we're trying to release here. I think maybe an ICAST. So that'll be, if we can nail it, I think it'll be really cool. It'll change. It's still going to be a tube, but it'll be a different variation of it. I think it'll be pretty cool.
I mean, their craw tube is, that is one of my favorite flipping baits, especially like North milfoil type stuff. Like it's might get some people mad that we said that, but I feel like a few of you guys, like Seth at Champlain type deal, have put that on the map type of deal, and throwing that. But that craw tube's a bad freaking deal, man. Like for flipping, and if you come down with it, you make a flipping tube, dude, I'm buying it. Like
Dude,
that's
I'm literally sitting here with a pile of them with my micrometers. Like we'll sit here, like because they got to be certain dimensions and certain sizes. But here's the pile of mess that I've been working on here. And
oh
actually,
man.
here's one of the prototype tubes. I'll just give you a quick look, but that's all you get. And it's kind of
We're gonna have people pausing and screenshotting.
you won't notice what it is, but if we can get it right, and they will, we'll get it right. I think it'll be really cool, and I think guys will definitely fish with it. It'll be
Heck yeah.
definitely a different twist for the tube than even the creature bait. So I'm looking forward to us getting it right for sure. So, but
Heck
yeah, I
yeah.
don't know. Have you noticed, Billy, that you've lost more fish on a tube? I know that crawl tube is a little bit different. I think your hookup ratio is probably better with the crawl tube because the way the plastic is soft. but just generally speaking, have you lost a lot of fish on a tube over the years or not necessarily?
I'll be honest, dude. I maybe on one hand can count how many times I've tried flipping with a tube. I mean, the closest I've ever is a craw tube, and that's most of what I've flipped with. And it's honestly, for the most part, that's because I don't our northern fish, you don't need to go too crazy to catch them
True.
flipping. But it's mostly, I mean, I can tell you right now, especially after watching Hunter in Texas, I've bought more tubes to flip with this year just to do it and learn it. But now I'd be curious. I think we should poll the folks that are tuning into this thing. Like, do you flip tubes? I want to see down in the YouTube comments, things like that. I'd be curious to see and get some feedback for you guys. How many people are flipping tubes right now? And then, especially if this new bait gets released and watching what Hunter did, and going forward, like especially talking about this on the show, how many more people are gonna start flipping tubes now?
Let's go. Hey, we're going to go back to the creature bait here before long. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
because everyone's going to be
yeah,
back on that game for sure. I've lost them on a tube ever since I fished smallmouth on Lake Erie years ago. When I
yeah,
didn't, before I even flipped the tube, I was losing them smallmouth on Lake Erie left and right with
yeah,
it. And a lot of guys did. And here's what something that this doesn't matter if you're flipping or whatever, but I feel like a lot of bottom baits, especially smallmouth on the Great Lakes, St. Clair, Erie, whatever. Most of your bites come when, Bailey? Probably what they say 75% of your bites come on the fall. Sometimes 90% of your bites come on the fall. It's never less than half, I don't feel like. Like, I feel like most of your bites come on the fall. So when you think about it, the bait's falling down. I don't care if it's in cover. I don't care if it's in a mat. I don't care if it's in open water and they're out there just swimming around chasing bait. When that bait's falling, the fish looks up. As we know, they like to feed up, and they might eat it near the bottom, but they eat this bait. The whole point that I'm making, they eat it head first. So now the
yeah,
bait's backwards. And a
yeah,
smallmouth, in my opinion, holds a bait a lot harder than a largemouth does. Like, they really crush the lure. So now
yeah,
you've got a bait that they don't eat it just they don't just go up and grab the hook. You know what I mean? They eat it backwards. So now you have to rotate this bait 180 degrees, flipping whatever you're doing, right? And it took me a long time to understand that. We'd actually be on them smallmouth up there, throw it out there, and they'd get it on the fall. Your line would jump, you'd crack, and they'd come up and jump, tube go fly, throw back, go flying, throw back in there, crack the next one. I went to braid to a leader years ago, and that finally eliminated a lot of that. And what I realized was I'd get my bait back and I just get my tube jig head back. I wouldn't even get a tube. Like, it would literally rip the. I was like, how in the world can they rip the tube off of the tube head? Like, it made no sense to me until the moment finally dawned on me that they're eating it head first, like most of the bass do with prey, especially with that's falling down like that. And you got to turn that whole deal around. So as you're rotating that, most tubes generally, if you look at a round tube, the hook point is going to go. It has so many places it can go, and it rolls up and balls up into the tube, just like I was talking about earlier with having too much plastic on the creature bait or having the hook too far forward in the creature bait. The hook wants to roll up into the bait instead of pushing out into the fish because of the fish eating it backwards.
mm-hmm.
So understanding that was a big deal. And like, that's why a lot of times you'll have guys talk about they, for whatever reason, they catch fish better on smaller hooks than they do on larger hooks. Well, that only makes sense because it takes less energy. That's why a lot of guys, I went to a 6/0 flipping hook before. I can't remember if I
Oof.
went to a 7/0, but I know I've used a 6/0 years ago, and I lost more on the 6/0 than I could ever lose on a 3, even on a giant bait. And I
Yeah,
couldn't figure, but now it all, over the years, it starts to make sense. So, um, being able understanding that the fish eat the bait backwards and understanding, may have to use a smaller hook and having the right uh, depth of the plastic and all that stuff to, ensure a good hookup is a big part of the game. So I could keep going on and on. I know I'm getting
yeah.
really nerded out by this stuff, but I enjoy it.
No, the technical stuff is awesome. I love diving into that. I know the folks that are tuning in definitely appreciate it. Is I know on the tube thing, like you hit it. I mean, here in smallmouth country, like for sure, they're losing stuff on tubes. And one of the things that I've learned through some of my mentors around here that fish tube was reel setting on tubes for that reason you're talking about. Where if you're throwing it on casting gear and you're trying to set the hook on them, like you're talking about how you might not get a good hook. Where if at least when you're reeling down into them, like it allows that at least the tube to try to adjust in that fish's mouth, and then you can hit them. Like it's a whole different gamut. I think that's why like the 2-inch tubes kind of blowing up too, like because it's just a smaller profile. It's like I think it's X Zone that came out with that tiny little micro tube jig. Like those are kind of Seems like in smallmouth country, the new rave, but
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and you made a really good point too. I didn't when I was talking about cracking those smallmouth, I was just trying to make the point that the fish were obviously eating it backwards by tearing the tube completely off of the jig head. But ideally, the best hook set in any type of flipping, in my opinion, casting, flipping, whatever, it's just harder to do when you're flipping. The best hook set is, I'm sorry, the best hook set is to pitch in there, get the bite, hopefully she's even heading. I like a lot of times when they're heading away from me and not rushing the bite, but reeling up the slack, having braid to fluoro or straight braid. I don't like to do fluorocarbon because once again, if they eat this thing backwards, I've got plastic to tear. You know what I mean? But I don't want to crack the braid. I just want to
yeah,
start, I want to apply pressure and start pulling and pull hard. And that allows that bait to just start to rotate. And I feel like that's what you were saying with those guys. And I know guys can do with monofilament on a light spinning rod. They'll just slowly reel down on them tube fish and then pressure set them and they catch most of the fish that they're catching. But if you
yeah,
go to cracking on them, that's when I think that violent crack, a lot of times, I mean, you can imagine in a fish's mouth, if you just an explosion. It's like an explosion goes off and it starts to blow. I don't want to say it blows their lips open, but it creates, it's going to pop their mouth open somewhere to where that bait has a good chance of coming out, or you're not going to hook them
yeah,
very good on the way out. But if you can reel down, tighten up, and then lean into them, that's the best scenario. But a lot of times when you're flipping, the reason why I say that's a really hard thing to do, if you flip up to a dock post and she's underneath the boat, you're going to have to crack that one. Or you know what I mean? You're going to have to reel up enough line at some point and have to crack her because a lot of times you don't know where she's at. Like you're just,
right,
reeling up as much slack as you can and cracking. But ideally, the best scenario is just to reel set and pull it extremely hard. And that's why I like the braid and the longer rod too, to just make sure you have tons of power. It's not a violent, it looks violent whenever you're pulling, but it's just a really hard pull set instead of a crack snap. I
right.
know we got Swindle's got the slackliner hat. I mean, that stuff's cool. Like I love slacklining them too, but I'm just saying, generally speaking, for me, I feel like I lose more of them that way. But
Yeah,
everyone's got their own way. And I think guys like Gerald, I would say, I just thought of that because he had the slackliner apparel that he sells, right?
yeah,
When you're using fluorocarbon, you can do a lot more slacklining than you can with braid or braid to fluorocarbon too. So there's
yeah.
different ways of going about it. So that doesn't make slacklining wrong. It's just I don't recommend slacklining on straight braid or slacklining on braid to fluorocarbon because you're going to pop your leader, you're going to lose more of them. So there's just a lot of different ways to go about it. I'm not trying to say my way is right. It's just what works for me. So
Yeah, no, and it's good because there's probably people tuning into this right now that are like, it's funny he says that. I lose fish a decent amount doing this and that. And then now they're gonna go try it. They're like, oh, light bulb. I'm like, it all makes sense now. Yeah, dude, that 7-Eleven for sure. Like I could, and you said it perfectly in saving you in certain fish. Like it's especially combined with the braid that has like zero hook set. Well, not even a lean, just like, oh crap, I have a fish. I'm reeling into it, and somehow the flipping hooks through their forehead.
yep.
Like it's crazy what that rod will do. I'm with you on the longer rod, especially for flipping. But in regards to oh shoot, where was I going? I had a freaking point. I was just thinking about. I lost it. This is the fun part about podcasting. You forget all these damn things. Son of a gun. It was a good one too.
I will say on the longer, maybe you'll help you think about it, but like I will say on the
Yeah.
longer rod too, a lot of people don't like them for good reason. Like they're cumbersome, it's
Uh-huh.
heavy. I've done it enough. Thankfully, by now, not that I'm young anymore, but like I don't have wrist issues or it's a lot heavier, and you cannot be as. I mean, there's things about a longer rod that's not as good, but I know if I'm fishing for my paycheck, like if I can still do it physically, if I can handle that longer rod physically, and I can get my bait, maybe it's not as perfect as I would be with a 7.3, but if I can get my bait up under that dock or up under that bush or whatever, 90% of what I could with a 7.3, and I've got that 7-Eleven in my hand, I'm going to pay more bills with that rod. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying it's not like yes, it is cumbersome, it is heavier, it is all those things, right? So there's a lot of reasons why guys steer away from it, but I'm just giving the reasons why I like to use it while I still can anyway. So
No, 100%. I mean, honestly, with a big weight too, like, speaking of specifically like punching, I feel like it makes it a hell of a lot easier. Like, especially with the weight in the rod, like the pendulum does all the work. Like, you don't have to really put much muscle into being able to flip. Granted, if you're
yeah,
not making super long flips, things like that, but like, yeah, I think it's the move. I remember what I was I was gonna say. It was more
yeah,
something I've noticed in watching you and your brother. Is you talk about that hook set, and you guys are identical with that. The one thing that's funny though, because it's I've noticed and I've teased Hunter about this. And so you have the same hook set, but one thing I've noticed that he does that you don't do is he gets on his tippy toes and then just leans like almost like he's falling back every time he does it. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, so I do. I will say, I don't know. I definitely take up. I feel like I do a lot more stepping and pulling, and he's
You're
more.
more firm ground where like if he misses that fish, he's fall. That's probably why he fell
He
on the
does a
boat the
lot
most.
more like his is more. Which I'm not saying this is wrong. He does a lot more like this, and kind of tippy toes like this. It's kind of his, and I like to
Uh-huh.
like and step. And as I'm stepping, I'm trying to. I feel like I'm bringing the house more than what he does, and I'm not trying to say that his is wrong. I'm just for the viewers.
Yeah.
I'm just explaining like
Yeah. Yeah.
the subtle difference. Like I'm trying to pull. Like I'm not trying to violently crack this fish, but I'm trying to use all the leverage I can and stepping back and like I want to be able to. I want to be able to keep going. You know what I mean? I don't want to get caught just like this because once you get here, there's nowhere else to go. If I'm on my tippy toes and I'm here, I can't go anywhere else. I better have her hooked because I can't. I'm going to fall backwards, like you said. You
Yeah.
know, so that's one thing. You know, there's just different ways of going about it. But obviously, he's caught a lot of them doing it, so I'm definitely not knocking
Yeah.
it. But there's different ways. You know,
Yeah.
so
It was just more like he posted something a while ago. It was like a hook set compilation basically, and it's just every hook set it's like tippy toes and then like trust fall almost like into the hook set. And it was
trust
just
fall.
so I
Dude, that's
mean it
I like
worked.
to take a big step. So another thing that I'll try to do too, like when I'm in a tournament or like when I'm practicing or whatever, if I'm really into it, is I try to keep my left foot heavy so my
Oh.
right foot can step back, if that makes sense. Because if I'm standing
Yeah.
flat footed and one bites me, now I've got to not only now I've got a fish swimming with my lure wherever she's at, right? But now I've got to transfer weight to my left foot because I like to step back with my right and swing with my left. If I'm already weight on my left foot as I'm going, all I got to do is just step back and start the. That way, I'm not doing the. If
Yeah.
she ends up missing it or whatever, and plus I can just take up more real estate whenever I have that foot light. I know we're
Yeah.
getting way into the weeds, Bailey, and I was trying to not go here because there's just so many little things that really probably don't matter. But in my mind, are all the little things that I like to do when I'm flipping. So
Well, I enjoy bringing those out and talking about them. That's the fun part for me, at least. But it's cool because there's so many different nuances, like from to you to your brother to Ish to Hackney, the flippers, that are really like the small things that you guys do differently. I think you all think very similar, but when you really break down the little things, you guys do a lot of stuff different. It was fun. We had Ish on the show, and he was he was giving you and Hunter some hell talking about when you guys visited the Delta. It was pretty cool to hear some of that stuff.
I
And
remember I watched that clip. Yeah, I watched what you guys did. That was I remember that like it was yesterday. Actually, the whole he was talking about the high speed gear ratio, flipping mats, and all that stuff. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, Ish taught us a lot, especially at that time. Like he literally introduced me to mat flipping at that time.
huh,
Well, I had done mat flipping before, but I really learned a lot. I went out there. Me and Hunter went and spent like a week out there in California with him, and I really learned. Obviously, I learned a ton after that, and I really didn't. I don't feel like I even got to where I was. And I'm not saying I'm good or great now, but I got a lot better when I moved to Gunnersville and down into the South
right,
because it just becomes something, dude. I flipped from pretty well from June to November, like for several years, like kind of almost to a fault. I think at this point, like I've done it so much, I should have been probably doing a jig head minnow and some other stuff. But
but
like
it's so much fun to flip,
it
dude.
is, and like I just never thought it was going to be something. You know, obviously we fish a different format now. It's not by biggest five with MLS. It's all changing, but like I just didn't see that coming. Like I felt like if you got really really good at this, you'd never need to do anything else in bass fishing. When that's obviously not the
Yeah,
case. But anyway, I've just spent a ton of time doing it since Ish basically showed us a lot of the ways to do it. I'll tell you another one that took us out the one day that helped me a lot was Bub Tosh years ago,
oh,
and I'm
yeah,
talking like 20. This is like 2013. So this has been like 12 years ago. But then you just take what people teach you, man, and you always just kind of go from there and develop your own ways. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And a
They
lot of
help
the
along
same
your
stuff
learning
still
curve.
applies. Everyone just has a different way that works for them. So, but it's
Yeah,
funny how, in the very end of the day, a lot of it is very similar. You know what I mean? Like, I know if you talk to Ish and Hunter, what we all talk about the proper ideal hook set, it's all this pretty well the same. You know,
yeah,
whether Hunter takes a short step and I take a larger step, whatever. It's still tightening up the line. It's a lot of those things, and that's with braid, right?
yeah.
And I know Ish still flips with fluor or did. I don't know. I think I got him off of that, but he was still flipping fluorocarbon a couple years ago. So he was doing a lot of slack lining then, So it's all. But I think for the most part, we agree on most theories. So which
Yeah.
is kind of cool.
No, I love hearing about that collaboration because I think it one helps both parties, I think, advance along the different things you learn from them. And yeah, I think it accelerates both learning curves. But yeah, I mean, dude, to your point, I love catching fish on anything. But if you find some topped out grass, I'm not doing anything else but flipping or frogging. Like I don't care what it is. It's just something when you see that something like what is the word I'm looking for? I guess just I don't want to say animalistic because that's not like the word I'm looking for, but it feels like when you see it, you're like, oh yeah, yeah, we're about to crack one. Like it just
You just feel like the man every time. There's no question.
it,
And I feel like a lot of
it's
people feel that way, dude. And the sad thing is, Florida's one of them. I'm here on the Tennessee River. It's not a whole lot different. Gunnersville, they've done pretty good with, but there's just becoming less and less of it. There really
yeah,
is. I think everywhere they're chopping the grass up, they're mowing it, they're spraying it, they're doing everything they can to get rid of it. So yeah, it's still there, but I feel like you have a growing interest in guys that want to fish that way and that have seen guys fish that way for years, and you also have way less grass and growth than what you used to have too. So it's kind of, just not the same as what it used to be, but there's still going to be a lot of money and a lot of tournaments won doing that stuff. It's just I don't think it's as good as what it was 10 years ago. And mainly because they
yeah,
just keep killing it and it just disappearing more and more. I know, here on Chickamauga, Nickajack, the grass was really good. Now it's all continuing to change at Nickajack. Here at Chickamauga, they just nuke it all the time. I'm pretty sure. Like I don't see
oh
much
jeez,
grass at all aside from the fall when they're pulling the wall. I mean, there's some grass, but it's not the days of old from what I from heard stories about. So maybe
yeah, I
that'll turn
mean,
back around, but still it's fun to do. When you find
I,
it and it's right, it's fun to do.
yeah, dude, I'm with you, man. Like here in New York, we're same freaking problem, and it's unfortunate. Like it used to be, some of our lakes were just beautiful red top milfoil blooms everywhere that
The
you'd
red
catch
stuff,
2 to
yes.
3, and everyone, and it's just gone, dude, gone.
And
It's unfortunate.
I don't see that changing. I just don't see people waking up tomorrow and being like, you know what, them herbicides, we're good on that. We're just gonna let that red tip milfoil come back.
Unfortunately, the top of our pyramid of fisheries, my friend, is the wake boats and the pontoon boats and
Yeah.
the Karens on the dock that just care about the swimming.
Yep. No, it is what it is though. But we'll have fun wherever we can find it. That's what I say.
That's right. That's right. Uh, well, dude. So, time of my last question for you, and we'll start wrapping the sucker up. Is for flipping and weight time of year. Do you kind of have a good rule of thumb of like, in the fall, I like a heavier weight to fall faster type of deal compared to where spring maybe I want it lighter, something along those lines.
It definitely varies. I feel like early when the water's cold, I don't like to go definitely more than a half. A lot of times it's quarter to 3/8. Someone there 5/16 is a really good one. It's pretty universal. I don't use a lot of heavier stuff pre-spawn during the spawn. Obviously, they're spawning, so I'm definitely not trying to drop a 3/4 into their bed. And obviously, when you're punching through thicker stuff, you still got to get the bait through. So if you're in like current and like fishing pine trees and stuff like that, you may have to go up to a half ounce just to penetrate that stuff. But as far as like just looser cover, pitching around, general pitching, quarter to 3/8 is definitely the way to go. And then you get into like say summer and fall. Obviously, if you're punching, you may have to go up to a 2 ounce or whatever you got to do. But generally speaking, even then, I will say that a 1 ounce can be really deadly in the summer and the fall, more submerged stuff and some of the
Hmm.
deeper stuff, say deeper than 5 foot. And I feel like a lot of times that 1 ounce, that 1 1/4, you got to have cleaner water though. I'm trying to like factor in all these things that it takes for this
Yeah.
stuff to be good. But cleaner water scenarios, I do feel like a 1 1/4 ounce at that in those scenarios will trigger a bite way better than, I'm talking summer and fall, warmer water temps can trigger bite way more than flipping a 3/8 or a half in those same type of sparser millful areas or whatever you're talking about. So sometimes
Yeah.
that fast fall really can trigger a bite summer and in the fall.
Love
But
that.
generally speaking, it's up to half ounce, not over 3/8 pre around the spawn, up to half ounce most of the time. And then there's periods of time where a 3/4 to 1 1/4 really can shine in open water scenarios. on a fast fall, open water, in summer and fall. That makes sense. I'm trying
Yeah.
to just condense so much into it, Bailey, to kind of
No,
give
it's good. That's
someone
why
an
this is a
idea. But
podcast. That's
yeah,
why it's a podcast, man. It's good. You can draw it all out. You can lay it all on the line. No, that's good. I'm curious. What is the deepest vegetation that you've flipped that you've caught fish out of?
I'd say like I don't think over 20, but I'd say 18.
Dang, like
There was
letting it
some
hit bottom
lakes.
or
Yeah, they're down there on the like on the grass line, way out there on that submerged stuff. Yep, yep. That
that's
was in
sick.
Texas when I caught him out there doing that, but that was so fun. Like you get out there and you're going and going and going, and then you'll find just one little corner, one little edge, or whatever it is. I mean, we didn't even dissect it at the time. But yeah, you catch them out that deep fairly. If there's grass out there, especially down in the south, that's a fun bite for sure.
Yeah, that's sick,
So
man.
you figure that time of year it gets hot in summer, they're just relating to that edge, no different than they are up in 3 and 4 foot now. They're out there in 15, 18, whatever that stuff, wherever that edge is. A lot of times, if there's a hole or whatever, but typically you're trying to fish some
Yeah,
sort of an edge. So, and
yeah,
that's obviously when your 3/4 to ounce and a quarter is going to come in. If you got grass growing out that far in 18 foot, you've got clean water. So that's when that bigger weight definitely comes in to not only getting down there, but to get them to react. Because they're down there, obviously they're able to see up better than anything else. They see that thing come shooting down. If it's coming down slow, they'll be like, what's this thing coming? But if it's coming down fast,
yeah.
there's a good chance they'll react to it. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
it's
Uh,
funny that you say that. I feel like I need to go down to Gunnersville, which isn't far from me where I'm at now at all. But I feel like I need to go down there and try some of that deeper submerged stuff a little
here
bit
we go.
more than what I have. So
I like it. I feel like that is another thing that sets apart some anglers from the run of the mill is the thinking about that, like trying to think about things a little bit off the wall of like, I'm gonna go try it. And they dedicate a whole day. It might not get bit at all, but
no,
they
you may
have the
not get a bite.
patience that they're gonna try it though. Cause like on the day you might try 50 different off the wall things throughout the year, and only 2 of the 50 work out, but those 2 of the 50 no one else is doing. That's I feel like the anglers that have the patience and the wherewithal to do stuff like that are the ones that are winning all the local derbs and are on that next level tier.
Well, like we said earlier, not to get back into it, but technology is starting to change those things too. Obviously, you know what I
Yeah.
mean. Like,
Right.
or
Right.
evasive sonar can change the way in which it maybe was crazy 10 years ago because it's so vast, but now when you can look under the water and see what's out there, some things might need revisited. So
Yeah. Yeah. They're definitely taking away the unknown fact of that.
yeah,
But
yeah, which is still
um,
cool though.
yeah. Do you have a bucket list fishery that you haven't been to yet?
No, man, honestly, like over the years, I feel like they keep changing, you know? I do feel like OH Ivy would be the one I would want to go to. That's
Mm.
just so far to drive. I don't think it's worth the drive, but I'd like to. You know what I mean?
Hey, if you need to connect to the boys we had on last week are all guys on Ivy and everything, and we got the connections, if you will.
I'd
But
say that's the spot. I love going to Mexico. I've been there down there with Pure Fishing different times. I've been down there with Yamamoto and that crew and had a lot of good times down there. But there's just something about I'd rather be in the United States. You know what I mean? So OHIV is definitely the one.
yeah, I remember the show we did with you and your brother on here. You guys talk about getting chased by cartel down on was it
Dude,
Amistad?
that was on
Falcon?
Falcon.
Falcon.
Yes,
Yeah. Unreal.
the Federales
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the cartel, and they were just having a war down there while we were trying to catch a bass. It was crazy.
Don't mind me. Just flip it. It's
Yeah,
my
just
buddies
flipping
and I would
trees back here with the cartel. No big deal.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Dude,
a
my,
whole
my
other story, but we did talk about on that podcast, and I literally told that story the other day.
oh
For the
man.
viewers that are watching, basically, we had a bunch of crazy stuff happen when me and my brother was in Mexico years ago. Well, not in Mexico, he's in U.S. Headed down the Falcon for an elite event. But long story short, there was just a lot of crazy things that went on down there. And I'm not trying to say it's bad down there, but they ended up. I know it was at that time, and I just remember the last evening we were there, we were catching them like every cast. I'm talking 6 to 9 pounders, 6 to 8s on a crankbait, about every other throw. And then they started firing rounds. Like you heard like a pistol go off, like pop, 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 pop. You're like, okay, someone's shooting over there. You don't think a whole,
Yeah, I
that
mean in
was,
the South anywhere you probably hear the same thing.
yeah, oh yeah. And then all of a sudden it was just, you could tell whoever was shooting their little BB gun over the hill there was getting toasted. I was like, okay, we're done. We left them
Oh,
biting, boy. We were gone, headed
I
back
don't
to
blame you,
Ohio.
dude. Heck no.
So when we got
Yeah.
back, I don't know, we probably got 5 or 6 hours up Texas because it's a long ways down there. And I told the guy, some guy that saw me, and because I was in my rat boat, saw me at the gas station, asked where I was coming from, and he's like, "Buddy," he was just telling me how crazy it had been down there. But that was 10 years ago, so
Yeah.
I don't know if it's any different now. But we had some stories from that one, but I won't bore y'all with any more. But it was a wild one. It was a wild trip. I
Well,
won't forget.
we'll have to link that episode specifically where you guys really fleshed out what happened down there in the description for people to go
Well,
tune
I'm
into it.
pretty sure I told you that story at least. And Hunter's got some good ones too. I'll have to
Yeah,
let you. I'll have to let him tell you those.
you guys dug into some pretty good ones. It was pretty dang good. Um, but yeah, dude, it's I don't know the fisheries uh nowadays, like even in still like I think even those are changing. You know what I mean? Like when we're talking about like the whole grass thing, it's you got to get them like while it's their heyday, I guess. To
I think the best lay. I mean, OHIV aside, I don't know a whole lot about that. I really don't know other than they're catching a lot of giants out there. Obviously, it's really good, but I think the best lake in the country probably is Gunnersville. Going, I mean, still going right now. I wouldn't have said that three
Gunnersville,
years ago, but I feel pretty confident saying that now. Like,
I think Gunnersville and Clear Lake, I think are
yeah,
in a 2-horse race for it
yep.
right now.
And there's just so much grass. I mean, the grass does grow out to 18 down there. A lot of it's eelgrass way out there, but still, there's just so much habitat from one end to the other on that place. And yeah, it gets a lot of pressure, but you just can't catch them all. Like there physically isn't enough fish. I hate to say that, but I feel like there's physically not enough fishermen there for the habitat and the population that's there to pressure all those fish at any given point in time.
Yeah,
So it just keeps getting better and better. Hopefully it continues.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I
How
feel
you
like
feeling
it's
about how you feeling about the Chickamauga event coming up?
dude, I love Watts Bar. I live right here on Chick. It's not hard to get. I fish Nickajack and Gunnersville more than anything, and I've really been fishing Watts Bar a lot. Chickamauga is just tougher. It's got giants in it. Like it's got legit. It's your best chance on the Tennessee River to catch a 10-pounder, hands down. But I just feel like there's definitely a lack of solid 3 to 5, 6 pound class fish in this lake
Hmm.
right now. And people want to argue that, but look, I've fished, like I said, I can go to Watts Bar. I mean, literally, dude, go up there and catch 30 or 40. And now Nick Jackson was good. You might go down there and catch on a good day. You might catch 15. You might catch 20. Gunnersville's obviously Gunnersville. We saw what it's kicking out, but I'll go out on Chick and it's like feast or famine kind of thing,
Hmm.
So I
Yeah,
think this event will be really good. It's still got a lot of fishing. Like I said, it's still your best chance on the Tennessee River to catch a 10-pounder. It just doesn't have the numbers that it used to have. I feel like it's more spot oriented. Like you really got to be on the juice to catch them. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to sleeping on my own bed. And I have done a lot of research out here. Spent a lot of time scouting because the water's been down. It's up now, but it was down all winter. So I've spent a lot of time finding every little nugget out there that I can find. Hopefully I can catch a bass here in a couple of weeks out it. So I'm excited to
yeah.
try all that stuff out.
Heck yeah, dude. Well, buddy, we're gonna wrap this sucker up, but for the folks tuning in, we'll have to leave a link for whenever you guys are able to sell those T-shirts so that they can get a
She'll be here
FAO.
by this next week here. So
Well, once it's launched, we'll drop a link in the show and also on social so people can go because we're definitely gonna be grabbing some. That's for dang sure. But what else is coming up on the horizon that the folks need to know about?
there's that. I mean, we've got different stuff in Walmart. We've got CUDA tools that dropped in Walmart. We've got some hooks, some different things. Sunglasses are still in there like they've been for years. So, just getting ready for this Chickamauga tournament. Like I said, it's been kind of like the mid-season break here lately. I say a break, but the last 2 weeks has been a little bit more chill than most. So I've just been
Yeah.
enjoying that and trying to reel in some. I might go back down to Gunner. I might go down to Gunnersville tomorrow and reel some in. So enjoy just reeling some in for a little bit and having fun fishing. But thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, dude. Thank you.
Heck yeah, always welcome, bro. It's you always got a seat on this show, but
I
appreciate you as
appreciate you,
always,
bro.
man. And we'll talk to you here soon.
Okay.
All right, everybody. That's going to do it for today's episode with Mr. Fletcher Shryock. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed that. Hopefully, right now, what you've done is added some tubes and some craw tubes and things like that to your cart, some FAFOs, or the FAFO, as Fletcher calls them, to your cart to go out and do some flipping, because springtime is a great time to flip. We're getting the summer months, which means even better times to flip, and go catch some freaking fish. Because regardless of how you're fishing, I don't care these days with all the drama and all that. I don't care your means of fishing, as long as you're not using a treble hook and snagging fish. Go fishing. All forms of fishing are fun, and that is the reason why we fish, is for fun. And Fletcher is one of the more fun guests that we've had on this show, because he likes to really draw things out and explain to full detail. He doesn't really hold back on anything, which is awesome to me. I appreciate Fletcher for joining us. Make sure you guys follow him down below at some of his adventures coming up. It sounds like he's got some pretty cool stuff on the horizon. And as we do here on Serious Angler with the Seriously Western show that's coming up here on Monday, which will be the next show from this platform. And then on Wednesday is our Champions Roast with Mr. Easton Fothergill, which really, really looking forward to that one. So make sure you guys tune in. If you're listening on MP3, please give us a rating and review. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Got a lot more content coming your guys' way. Appreciate y'all, and we'll see you on the next one.